You are welcome to another episode of HN What's Your Say? The #1 listening show where we discuss real issues with real people like you. We are still featuring R. Kelly. Real name Robert Sylvester Kelly. Also known as the R&B King. R. Kelly has been at the receiving end of all kinds of prejudicial tendencies by government and the Department of Justice over the past 5 years. These malicious groups have strategically worked together to ensure that the R&B King never sees the light of day again, and it appears they were always ready to do whatever it takes, even if it meant breaking the sovereign laws of this nation. If these two institutions had only done their work right, we wouldn't be having so much to criticize about the R. Kelly trial phase. But because the entire process was fraudulent and only aimed at the capture of R. Kelly's career and freedom, the government together with their DOJ counterparts created a mess of everything. As if the blunders already made by the government prosecution and the BOP were not enough damage to the case against R. Kelly, as if the overstated New York 30-year sentence that followed the wrongful conviction were not enough, when it came to sentencing time in Chicago, the federal judge did not hesitate to issue an overcharged 21 years of time behind bars with 1 year to be served consecutively after the already running 30-year sentence. When R. Kelly's attorney Jennifer Bonjean made a parallel computation, however, the two did not tally and she determined the 240-month sentence issued to R. Kelly rather excessive and above what the standard guidelines would have envisaged. Even worse still, the government together with the DOJ claimed the overstated 240 months, which was way over the standard 135 to 168 months, was based on the findings that R. Kelly was involved in activities of obstructive nature, as though to suggest they quickly forgot he and his co-accused were all duly acquitted on the obstruction of justice charges. According to Jennifer Bonjean, the district judge Lynon Weber gave a little more than a polite nod before quickly jumping to the conclusion and deciding that he believed the appropriate sentence was 20 years of imprisonment. The district court therefore, according to Bonjean, committed procedural error by concluding without a well-articulated basis that defendant should be sentenced well above the guidelines range. It's strange how the government would insist that it presented ample evidence that defendant obstructed justice and received CP, or that he conspired to receive the said tapes even though defendant and his co-accused were duly found not guilty for this said conduct. And this is the way government has been behaving all along throughout the R. Kelly trial process. The government will present anything they dream of as gospel truth, even if they know well it does not necessarily apply to R. Kelly's situation. This is the very same way they had the confidence to introduce the RICO and Mann Act violation charges onto his New York charge sheet. Sadly, the DOJ is seemingly always in agreement with the government's malicious intentions, even though they know well this is all against the law. Bonjean, however, maintains that the government evidence fell far short of even the lower standard in attempting to prove that R. Kelly was in any way involved in obstruction of justice. And in fact, the government did not even bother to point out to this court any record cites of testimony that substantiates its now disapproved charges that defendant obstructed justice in connection with the 2008 prosecution. It's absurd that the government until today continues to echo the narrative that was overwhelmingly rejected by the jury and simply asks court to assume that its proof satisfied the lower preponderance standards. The government ought to remember that the jury acquitted the defendants based on their own evidence in conjunction with unrefuted defense evidence which proved a very different set of circumstances from those charged in the indictment. And for the court to refer to these very charges in deciding how long R. Kelly must serve is the most embarrassing legal mistake throughout this trial period. It's rather absurd to see that until today R. Kelly has to continue defending himself against claims that were duly acquitted many years back. This court seems more than ready to find itself at fault each time it helps the government achieve their sinister plans against the R&B King. It's no wonder they managed to ignore an entire trial process that was concluded back in 2008, where R. Kelly, who was charged with similar allegations as in 2019, was found not guilty and duly acquitted by the very same court. How they managed to charge him again for these very crimes he was acquitted for back then yet by the same court is hard to understand. I imagine if he is finally released earlier than they envisaged, they will come up with yet another way of trying him for the third time. It's amazing how this government of ours is willing to turn a single citizen into a legal testing ground where they are free to experiment and exercise new versions of the U.S. law that have never been enacted by Congress. This is exactly what they have made out of R. Kelly. It's only fair that this stops to allow him a break to also feel like a citizen of this country he belongs to. At the moment, this matter is in the hands of the appeal court to decide whether our country should have the right to descend on one man and reduce him to a legal testing field like they have done R. Kelly or not. Meanwhile, the argument surrounding the case against R. Kelly has never been whether he is a good man or a bad man. But good or bad a man, the government rights to prosecute him are limited only to scenarios where he has evidently broken the law and not for what kind of person he is. The prosecutors are therefore obligated to stick to the law when prosecuting, which they never did. Instead, it was the government breaking all the laws and getting out of their way with hope to take down the R&B king without a fight back. Thankfully, R. Kelly has the most able attorney when it comes to appealing cases of this nature. Bonjean has successfully brought the government to account in cases where they have registered excesses when handling such cases, and has successfully brought many individual prosecutors and judges to their knees who she has challenged in the higher courts of the land. According to Mindy Stein, it is so unfortunate to see the government choose to break laws all in the hope of locking up one man for his profile. When I heard he was sentenced to 30 years back in New York, I was so heartbroken and I cried. I can't imagine how his children, family and friends felt. The other part I did not believe until today is that the court managed to find him guilty on all 10 counts. How was that even possible? I couldn't stay focused. It felt like someone had taken the air out of me. To see the same events in Chicago where he was issued another 20 years with completely no regard of what the standard guidelines do suggest is mind-boggling. I hate that after all this malice and abuse of his rights they still go ahead and call him the disgraced singer, which is not right at all levels. I can't wait for the day he walks out and gets his life back in order. I bet all people who turned their backs on him are going to trip over each other to get to him first. How people love finished goods. According to Joyce Sanders, for sure, looking at the way things have transpired through the 2 trials, R. Kelly deserves to be acquitted on all charges as soon as possible. And I repeat, we do not need a retrial but rather an acquittal. According to the evidence available and the testimonies made by those accusers, R. Kelly is an innocent man. The real culprits here are the government officials like Kim Foxx who attempted to breach the laws of this land, and these need to be locked up and the keys thrown away. I am for R. Kelly's safety and return to freedom. If you wish to take part in a live interview on this channel discussing any of these topics, let us know by emailing us on sashahnnewsroom@gmail.com for scheduling. That is all we had for you today on HN What's Your Say? To keep updated whenever we post a new video, subscribe to this channel now. Also remember to hit the bell icon and enable notifications. And feel free to share your opinions with us in the comment section below, and let us know if you would like us to publish your views in our next release. We value all our subscribers' opinions.